that killed 3 students and left several others, including a teacher, injured. Judge Brennan declared the then 15-year-old shooter was the most direct cause of the mass shooting, and by her ruling dismissed a number of lawsuits that were ongoing against Oxford Community Schools and its employees. Judge Brennan's ruling also declared that even in the case of gross negligence, not declared in this case at this time, that the district and its employees' responses to the discussions with both the shooter and his family prior to the murders had, quote, no reasonable trier of fact could conclude that any of the conduct of any of the individual Oxford defendants was the one most immediate, efficient, and direct cause of the injury or damage to the plaintiffs, end closed quote. Basically, because the school district is a public school district, it is a government entity and therefore qualifies for protections under the umbrella of government immunity in Michigan. In response to the ruling, attorney Ven Johnson, the lawyer for many of the families currently suing the school district and officials from the school district, said he and his clients continue to believe that government immunity is unconstitutional and that they call on the legislature to change the laws surrounding it so that agencies can be held properly accountable in the future should they present some sort of negligence, or some sort of negligence in a case like this could be proven in a court of law, that these government entities and officials that represent them could be held accountable should they be accountable in these situations. Now, again, despite us being over a year beyond this shooting at Oxford High School in November of 2021, there's still a lot of info that has yet to come out yet, that it is still part of the investigations, the ongoing cases against both the then 15-year-old shooter, as well as both of his parents, who are currently, all 3 of them of which are currently imprisoned. And the more that we learn, the more we're going to have a clearer picture of what went wrong in the moments leading up to that shooting, as well as what steps should have been taken by individuals that had the authority to make certain moves beforehand that could have potentially prevented this shooting, but may or may not have actually done so. At this time, it's tough to really make that definitive call one way or the other. And in this case, it all came down in these lawsuits to this particular decision being made in the local courts, because if there's government immunity that applies to Oxford, and in this case it does, that means that these families, that means that their lawyers, these lawsuits go away. And those lawsuits at this time have gone away. There's no word just yet, at least in this article from Jennifer Chambers at the Detroit News, whether or not this may be appealed and go to a higher court, or if this will be the final decision in terms of government immunity for both Oxford Community Schools and the officials that represent the school district and made decisions leading up to the shooting that took the lives of 3 students at Oxford High School and left several others injured in November of 2021. Prior to Judge Mary Ellen Brennan's ruling, there were nearly a dozen lawsuits against Oxford Community Schools and district officials. Those at this point are moot until further notice. Also making headlines today from the team at Bridge, Michigan. On Friday afternoon, 2 additional students at Michigan State who were critically injured in a mass shooting on campus just a little under 3 weeks ago have been discharged from Sparrow Hospital. This is in addition to one student, Troy Forbush, who had been discharged previously and was reunited with his family recently in Florida as he began his recovery. At this time, 2 injured students from the shooting remain in Sparrow Hospital in various conditions. It is unclear whether the 2 students that were discharged from Sparrow on Friday were sent directly home or to other medical facilities for further treatment. That news may or may not come in the coming days. The shooting 3 weeks ago tonight took the lives of 3 Michigan State students, Ariel Anderson, Alexandria Werner, and Brian Frazier, and left 5 students hospitalized, all in critical condition at that time. And at this time, of course, now 3 have been discharged from Sparrow Hospital over the last week and a half or so, and 2 remain in Sparrow Hospital as Michigan State continues its recovery from a mass shooting less than a month ago. right on campus at the MSU Union as well as at Berkey Hall. All those headlines are making news today on our website on civiccentertv.com on our local news page. At the top, we also have links to public health and updates and information regarding COVID-19 and other topics of interest in the public health from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, as well as the Oakland County Health Division. Stay up to date on that page, on our local news page. For what's making headlines across our local area each and every day, we update that page right before we go on for our live Megacast show, Monday through Friday, live at 10 a.m. right here across our network here in Oakland County, so you can stay up to date with all these stories. I encourage you, click through and read those stories in full, all those supporting materials from these different journalists and these different outlets that are doing really great work on the front lines, going well beyond what we're able to do in our capacity here with this program in order to investigate these stories, to learn all this information. And then on the other side, we come back over here and we analyze it ourselves and talk to experts in the community that are able to give us some other insight, some additional insight, or some further insight into this in a more long-form interview sort of a deal. That's what we do here in these other outlets. They do amazing work every single day. So we highly encourage you, if you have the means to do so, to subscribe to these publications and support local journalism right here in Oakland County and southeastern Michigan. We have a great show ahead on this Monday edition of the Megacast. Up next, we'll talk about Oxford, MSU, and mass shootings in general here in Michigan. What is the state legislature doing to address this issue? Is it all about the guns, or are other measures and other topics needing to be addressed in order to resolve the issue of mass shootings in Michigan? State Senator Rosemary Bayer joins us next to discuss this on the Megacast.
I'm Steve Eiserman of the Detroit Red Wings, and I think every child in Michigan deserves a safe, healthy, and happy childhood. Can we build a state where Children Trust Michigan isn't just a name, but something our kids believe? Please support Children Trust Michigan as the voice for children and families by visiting the website to learn more.
Wondering what to say to someone who's been sexually assaulted or abused?
I believe you. I'm so sorry this happened.
It's not your fault.
Confidential and anonymous help is available at the Michigan Sexual Assault Hotline. Connect with us 24/7. Call 855-VOICES-4 or text 1-866-238-1454 for help. Learn more at michigan.gov/voices4. Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important.
And now the same is true in the face of flu.
Influenza has the power to infect millions.
But it's easy to protect yourself, your family, and your community.
The flu vaccine is safe and effective. And with COVID-19 still around,
it's essential. Together we can face flu season head on.
Visit michigan.gov/flu.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Oakland County and all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program on our website at civiccentertv.com/Megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State, including our co-flagship, My Michigan TV, and find more information about all of our partnering local stations right here in Oakland County. While you're on our website, at the top of the page, you'll find links to our social media on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube, and stay up to date with us all across social media with posts throughout the week as well. Joining us now on the program is our state senator representing the 13th District in the Michigan Senate. Rosemary Bayer joins us today on the program. Senator Bayer, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, glad to have you on with us as tonight will be 3 weeks since the mass shooting at Michigan State University in which 3 students were killed and 5 additional students were hospitalized, 2 of which remain in Sparrow Hospital System at this time after good news on Friday that 2 additional students out of the 5 had been discharged from Sparrow. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, there was so much call to action, as there always is in these cases, from the community, from legislature members, as well as others that were directly affected by these shootings. So in the 3 weeks since, what has been the discussion in Lansing and in your caucus and across the aisle as well about addressing mass shootings?
Well, I would say that in the 15 months since the shooting in Oxford, we actually got a lot more active and pushed harder and harder to introduce some safe legislation, firearm safety legislation. When last November, after the election, we had a suspicion that we might have an opportunity to actually move some legislation forward in this space under the new leadership in the House and Senate. So we started working on updating some of the fundamental pieces of legislation that other states are using all across the country to actually build some firearm safety, some protections into Michigan law. So we started in November. We had a schedule that was a little bit longer than the one we're working on now. As much as we have had shootings around the state, all over the place, individual shootings that don't get as much attention. When the Michigan State shooting happened, there was so much pressure and so much momentum and so much concern by everyone that we started to accelerate what we were doing. So moving up our schedule a little bit, just basically pushing harder to get things done faster. And so we introduced the 3 different sets of bills a little over a week ago, and are now going through the hearings process and moving to voting soon, hopefully before the end of the month, but soon.
And so often when these unfortunate events happen, and now in the last 15 months, really unfortunately twice have happened right here in the state of Michigan, affecting people all across our local area. When that happens, the reaction tends to be, as it should be, very emotional, very visceral for our communities. And they're calling for action. They want that action immediately to prevent these kinds of situations from coming up in the future. Again, even just months away from when they had happened previously. But unfortunately, with the way that our government works, these processes aren't really able to take things on immediately. It takes time. So with that being the case, and what you've already discussed with three bills already in the circuit as it is, when can the people expect that maybe some of these bills may go through the process they need to go through and become law in Michigan?
Luckily, we had the base bills prepared that have been reintroduced every 2 years for the last 8 years or so. We took those starting in November and started a whole new round of input from stakeholders, getting people involved from the national groups, the national firearm safety groups like Giffords and Brady's and those folks, every town. We started working with our local organizations, the sheriffs, the police chiefs, the state police, the attorney general's office, all the different stakeholders that are involved in this kind of work, and getting their input now to update those bills. So we started in November. Like I said, we were planning to hopefully get them to a vote maybe the end of April. So after Michigan State happened, we just started pushing really hard on those reviewers, those groups that we were getting input from, to make sure that we are doing all the right things, and pushed the date forward as much as possible. So maybe we will be able to do this by the end of March. That's our current goal, where we are in the process. We introduced the bills. We've had hearings. We've had 1 hearing in the Senate, 1 hearing in the House of Representatives, and then we anticipate 1 more hearing this week in each of those 2 houses. And at that point, we feel like we should have all the feedback that we need. We should have the final inputs from different organizations and ready to actually take those bills to the House and Senate floor to vote on. So our hope is before the end of March, but we can never commit because we don't know. And then the last step is the governor will take the bills that pass both the House and Senate, and we're feeling confident. I mean, we're not going to get overconfident, but we're feeling confident that we'll be able to pass them now And the governor has already expressed her willingness to sign the bills. So hopefully that sticks and we get them all done this spring.
We're joined by Senator Rosemary Bayer on today's edition of the Megacast, the Michigan State Senator from the 13th District, joining us on the program. And Senator Bayer, with addressing mass shootings, typically it tends to be those in the Democratic caucus that are more eager to address the issue from the standpoint of gun violence and gun safety legislation. But how much bipartisan support has there been in this effort, if any, as your caucus and others have brought forth legislation to the Senate as well as to the House?
I think it's building. I will say that there are a couple of Republicans who have said they're joining our firearm safety caucus, which is a group of legislators from both the House and the Senate coming together, working on this. So we'll have some Republican representation there. Hopefully more will come along as they understand better what we're actually doing, the bills that we are proposing. We are very carefully taking input from different gun groups. We're looking at making sure that we're protecting our hunters, the things that happen in Michigan, right? We're getting at violence that is outside of the normal things that happen here if you're a hunter. So when we ask people, do you think we should have a universal background check? So instead of just doing a background check for handguns, the first set of bills will check on long guns as well, which makes sense. Why would you not do that? And over 90% of the people in Michigan, and that includes Republicans and gun owners, have agreed that that is something that we should do. So that's the first set of bills. The second set is what you would call child access protection. And so when you talk about the things that happen, to where our kids get a hold of a firearm and, whatever, accidentally shoot their dad, accidentally shoot themselves. I mean, all kinds of bad things happen when people do not store their firearms securely. That's what that does. It says store it securely. If a minor gets a hold of it and hurts themselves or someone else, the owner is going to be held responsible. That seems very practical. It doesn't take your gun away. And the third one, while we talk a lot about mass shootings, and this does have an impact, the main efficacy of the extreme risk protection orders, otherwise known as red flag bills, is really about suicide more than anything else. In states that have these set of bills enacted, there's about 20 states around the country that do this now, they are seeing a notable reduction in suicide up to 17%. And when you consider that most firearm deaths are suicide, almost 2/3 are suicide, and most people who attempt suicide with a gun are successful, whereas most other methods fail, this is the number one impact to have on firearm death in our country. So with these three sets of bills, we're reaching out for the child access issue, right? The thing that happens when kids get a hold of guns. This would have made a difference in Oxford. On the red flag issue, which likely would have made a difference in Michigan State, as far as we can tell from the outside. I will say we have not that close to it, but it's really designed mostly for suicide prevention and makes a big difference. So we know that, and all three of these poll well in Michigan, all three of them poll over 80%, including Republicans, including gun owners. So we know we're doing the right thing here with these three sets of gun safety bills.
Senator Rosemary Bayer joins us from Michigan's 13th District on today's edition of the Megacast. Senator Bayer, as we talk about the issue of gun violence, as we talk about the issue of mass shootings, the argument from across the aisle tends to be it's not just a gun issue, it's also a mental health issue. And it's a very valid point, too. We look at the Oxford High School shooting. This was a teenager that was clearly in a lot of distress, that was not properly being addressed. And same thing in the case of Michigan State. This 43-year-old man, his father had reported that he was in quite a state of distress since the death of his mother. So in terms of legislative response in that regard, what is being done to address mental health at the statewide level that can also play a key factor in a lot of these acts of violence, whether they are mass shootings or individual acts of violence too?
And that is literally what the extreme risk protection orders, why they're so effective, is it gives the family member an opportunity to do something when they know that this person they care about could be at risk of hurting themselves or someone else. So it does directly go to that issue. Now, that being said, one of the things that we're still lacking in Michigan is the opportunity, the money, the time to rebuild a mental health system that was taken apart some decades ago in our state. So we have started investing in that. In this current governor's term, and with Governor Whitmer, last year alone, we invested $380 million in building a new state mental health hospital. We are putting hundreds of millions of dollars into local mental health community agencies. In Oakland County, we have the Common Ground, we have Easter Seals, we have the Community Mental Health Network. Other counties have similar situations, so we're funding those groups as much as possible. We're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into schools to provide mental health supports for students as well as staff. And then the other piece that is really critical right now for all of us is on those first responders who really take a lot of the stress and strain of managing our environment these days, making sure that they have access to mental health. So we are building up this new system that we just haven't had for a long time. I think we all recognize that it's a real sore spot for us here in Michigan, and we're doing the right thing to invest there.
And another argument that does come up, and it's another very valid point, is we can put all these laws in place that make it tougher for people that should not have guns to get access to guns, and make it that much tougher for those. In that case, for those people that shouldn't have guns to commit these acts of violence, but ultimately criminals that want to commit acts of violence with guns, people that want to do something as horrific as what happened at Oxford or at Michigan State, they still have some avenues beyond the law to make that happen. So in your consultation, because this is such a multi-departmental effort in the wake of mass shootings and to prevent mass shootings, whether it be from the federal level, from the FBI and the ATF, to locally, as you mentioned earlier, Oakland County Sheriff's Office and the state police, has there been discussion too about expanding the tools that are in place for our state police, for our local law enforcement also, to work on getting some of these illegal guns that may be out there in our communities off the streets too, which can also play factors in these individual acts of gun violence as well?
Yeah. So there are some programs in place that are been kind of revved back up, the buyback programs. We have also one of the things that has the most impact on the violence overall in the community, in particular the gun violence, has to do with intervention and prevention programs. So one of the things that the governor has proposed for her new budget this year, and that we actually just voted to pull the funding forward so we can start now instead of next year, is a public health office of violence intervention, so that we can focus. We've been able to do some pilots across the state over the last few years, and it really makes a big difference in places that we've tried it. Everything from in my district, where we had 3 kind of suburban communities working together, to more urban environments like Grand Rapids and other places where we've been trying these intervention strategies, and they have an effect that is just tremendous, and generally fairly quickly too, to be able to actually see the impact. So we're working on both fronts, trying to look at our community structure as a whole and how do we do those things, and then working, again with the national organizations to stay on top of any interventions that help with. So we have some proposed legislation, for example, that make it illegal to have ghost guns, where people will print firearms and they have guns without serial numbers, so there's no way to track them. Just having universal background checks gives us the opportunity to actually track firearms when they come in. I mean, usually then often they start legal and they end up illegal, but it makes it easier to find them and take care of that if we're actually tracking all of them, not just a certain kind. So there's a lot of different avenues that we're working on for this issue, because we know it's a big one and it spans all kinds of situations.
It's a complicated issue, and it's going to take a lot of efforts in a number of different areas in order to maybe not necessarily resolve the issue of gun violence and mass shootings here in Michigan and across the U.S., but at least, take some of those numbers down and prevent some, if not all, of these situations from happening. Joining us on the program today is Senator Rosemary Bayer from Michigan's 13th District in the state Senate. In the wake of the shooting at Michigan State University, just a little over a week later, you participated in a town hall right here in West Bloomfield, where we originate our program, with State Representative Noah Arbit and U.S. Representative Haley Stevens on the issue of gun violence and other issues affecting our state and our nation as well. And these discussions continue in the wake of this mass shooting, and certainly in the wake just a little over a year ago of the shooting at Oxford High School, where at that time in your previous term you were their state senator in that district as well. What is the pulse of the community in the area you represent now and in the areas you've represented previously in very recent history on this issue, and what they really want to see happen at the state level and beyond to prevent tragedies like what happened locally here in Oxford and even more recently at Michigan State?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, during the last year when we ran for office, right, we all ran for re-election, and my team and I, we knocked on 40,000 doors. And what we do when we go visit people, because we do it all the time, we don't just do it for election, we knock on the door and we say hi and we ask them what's important. What do you think we should be working on? And always, gun violence was one of the top two things. It was either first or second in every single conversation this came up. So we know people are demanding us to do something about this. It's just so long overdue. And, when I talk to my people in Oxford, when I talk to, all my friends, I lived up there for a long time. So most of my friends, many of my friends are up there, and I still get involved in the community. They too, as much as, I lived in North Oakland, I grew up in North Macomb, everybody hunts, everybody has firearms. It's a thing in Michigan, right? We have a lot of hunting, and that's normal. All of them want us to do something about this. None of them want this to continue to have our kids be afraid at school. So, it's time. We're overdue at fixing this, and the people of Michigan are telling us to do our job. So here we go. We're trying to do our job now.
And you've had continued consultation, as you said, with those in Oxford directly affected by that shooting, with those locally that were affected by the shooting at Michigan State University in East Lansing just 3 weeks ago, the evening of Monday, February 13th, just after 8 o'clock at 8:18 when that shooting began. And recently, even you've had some discussions with representatives from March for Our Lives, which of course was formed in the wake of the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. What's being done from the statewide level too to address what the needs are for the victims of these shootings, those that have been traumatized by experiencing a mass shooting, experiencing multiple mass shootings, as we've heard many stories of from the Michigan State shooting just recently. What's being done from the state of Michigan's point of view to support the victims of these crimes?
Yeah. Well, we have certainly done everything we can to pour resources into both of those school environments as things happen, making sure that every student there, every teacher, anyone there actually. In Oxford, we still have extra supports. We've got funding through the federal government for a resilience center there. We poured in mental health supports, therapy dogs that are still there. Same thing with Michigan State, all the supporting structure to help the students and the people who work there and the people who live there get through the trauma of this. It doesn't just go away. It tends to stay. I am a victim myself, a survivor, I should say myself, of gun violence, and recognize that the trauma of it actually never leaves you. It's just about how do you cope, where do you put that, and how do you carry on and move forward. And so for us, supporting that as much as we can, making sure that, the schools get the resources they need. Each one of our schools around the state now gets a safety budget where they get to decide what's the right thing for their school. A lot of schools often are opting for things like gunpowder sniffing dogs and things like that, not necessarily armed guards. There's a lot of different ways to make it feel safer at school, and we're setting it up so that we have set it up so that the schools get to make their own choices about that. So that will continue probably for a very long time. I don't know.
Senator Barrett, before we let you go, I do want to give you another couple minutes to say anything else that we haven't discussed on this issue that would be important for our local audience to know and for your constituents to know about what's being done at the statewide level to address some of the issues that lead and factor in to mass shootings.
Thanks. Yeah, I would just remind people that, there is gun violence every day in our state. It's not just the one that just happened 2 weeks ago or the one that happened 15 months ago. It happens every day and every day across the country. It is the largest cause of death for children. The number one cause of death for children and young adults now is gun violence. So it's time for us to do something to fix this. We're doing it very carefully. We could use your support. Call your representatives, call your state senators, and tell them that you want them to vote for this as it comes up on the floor in both the House and the Senate. We could use your help on that. We will continue to go forward. If you know people who are at risk for themselves or others, you will have more options to get them help. As it is now, though, call the mental health hotline. It is 411. That's all you have to do. And you will get help for them. They can get help for themselves. So just wanted to leave you with that message at the end too. There's always something we can do to help.
The best way to keep the pulse of the community with your representatives, both in the state house and the state senate and federally at the federal level as well, is to call your local representatives. You can call Senator Baer's office at 517-373-2417, 517-373-2417 for more information and to discuss with her staff what you'd like to see done right here in Michigan for Oakland County. Senator Baer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
Thank you as well. We'll take a short break here on the Megacast. On the other side, thousands still without power following Friday's winter storm. We'll give you the latest update next on the Megacast.
Many people are feeling overwhelmed and struggling with mental wellness these days. So be kind to your mind. Give yourself permission to breathe. Share your feelings. You are not alone. Have hope. Talk to a Stay Well counselor for free confidential help 24/7 through the COVID-19 hotline.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can learn more about our program and stay up to date with us on our website at civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Well, over on our local news page, you'll see plenty of stories making headlines all across the state of Michigan, and all eyes have been lately, of course, on mass shootings in the wake of the shooting at Michigan State University, and certainly our thoughts continue to be with the community in East Lansing as well as with our communities right here in the wake of the Oxford shooting just 15 months ago and some change. But what's been going on more locally, more recently, has been a number of storms that have taken out power for so many people in our local communities. As of this morning, about 25,000 DTE customers remain without power following last week Friday's massive snowstorm that dropped upwards of 10 inches and downed 2,000 power lines across our local area. Following the storm, over 200,000 customers were left without power in this instance. At this time, DTE says 98% of its customers approximately are unaffected by the remaining outages scattered throughout the Metro Detroit area. The other major local utility, that being Consumers Energy, is reporting a very marginal number of outages, just 13 amongst its customer base as of 7 a.m. today in this article from the Detroit News. The culprit for many of these outages was, of course, the heavy snow. This snow fell quick, and it was very packable snow as well. And so much like the ice we saw from the ice storm the week before that, it's sticking to our power lines, sticking to our tree branches. I was helping my dad this weekend actually move his generator over to a friend of his over to her house so that she'd have power, because she was out of power across Oakland County. And so I was helping her with that. And as I'm loading this generator into the back of my car, I had snow falling off the branches. I had small branches that were falling on top of me. We'll get a picture up maybe tomorrow on the show. I should have prepared this before today's program. But my dad in his front yard has 3 ornamental pear trees that we planted well over 10 years ago. 2 of those ended up falling victim to the massive amount of snow, one just snapping basically right in half from the top down. And so that just shows you the weight of this snow. And then when that comes down to power lines, that knocks them either out of commission or down altogether. And DTE said after all this, over 2,000 power lines were directly affected, being downed by this heavy snow. All this happening just 1 week after the major ice storm that knocked out power for over 700,000 customers locally, some for over a week, and some that got their power back just mere hours, maybe even less than a day before the snowstorm on Friday ended up hitting them and maybe taking them right back out of power once again. You can keep up to date with where these power outages are still occurring on our ICE page, civiccentertv.com/ice, where we have links to the DTE outage map as well as the Consumers Energy outage map, as well as ways that you can report to them that you may have a power outage affecting your area, or get in contact with your utility if you're continuing to have repeated outages and issues with your power. civiccentertv.com/ice for that, and civiccentertv.com on our local news page for all these local stories, including this update from the Detroit News on power outages in the result of Friday's massive snowstorm, over 10 inches of snow, and still over about 25,000 people out of power in the Metro Detroit area. Well, coming up now on the program, it's all about jobs. We've heard so much lately about how tough it is for employers to bring new employees in and retain their employees. And for those that are entering the job market, what can they do to put themselves in the best position to negotiate exactly what they want to get out of their next job and all the benefits and the necessities they need in order to have a successful career in the workplace, but also be able to continue to have a successful daily life outside of the workplace as well. Joining us now to talk about all these resources and more is Jennifer Llewellyn from Oakland County Michigan Works. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Tyler. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Yeah, great to have you with us again, because Michigan Works does such great work with employers, with employees, with people seeking jobs and seeking to hire throughout the state. And in the past, we've talked to you mostly about how your organization helps people that are looking for jobs get into those jobs. But nowadays, it really seems like these companies need a lot more of the help themselves to entice people that are looking for jobs, or even those that maybe have taken a back seat in looking for jobs of late, to ultimately fill these positions that they're, in some cases, in desperate need of. So what are some of those resources that you're providing to local businesses to help them in this journey as they're trying to fill those positions and get themselves back to some normalcy in their operations?
Yeah, Tyler, it's an interesting time in my 25 years of workforce development. I'm not sure that I've seen a time like this where we have, struggling with labor force participation rate. How do we get those individuals that have been sidelined over the course of the last few years? How do we get them to re-engage in the workforce? And then also, how do we, meet the needs of employers that they have significant needs, both entry level. We have the evolving economy of EV and connected mobility and Industry 4.0 and robotics and automation. And so it's a unique time. Our team is really focusing on both sides of that effort. So on the first side, how do we get more individuals to participate in the labor force again? So really working with our residents across Oakland County to identify what barriers they're facing that might be interfering with their ability to get back to work. So maybe if childcare is an issue, or transportation is an issue, or there's other barriers that they're facing, we have resources and funding programs and initiatives and grants available to help individuals overcome those barriers and help them transition back to work. One item in particular we're really proud of is an investment from County Executive Dave Coulter and the Oakland County Board of Commissioners to create our scholarship program, our child care scholarship program. We're awarding $1,200 scholarships to individuals who are transitioning back to work or transitioning into education to help them get over that hump and help them make that transition back to work if child care is a factor. On the flip side, we're also working with businesses across the county to help them identify, what gaps do they have? Do they need to fill entry-level positions, mid-level or high-level positions, and be really creative, right? If they're using the post and pray model, post a job and pray they fill it, it's not going to work in this economy. So helping them come up with innovative strategies using social media, virtual job fairs, making sure their job descriptions and job postings are really enticing, making sure their wages are competitive. It's really a time to be creative and use maybe some different strategies than what they've used in the past.
The easiest way to find Oakland County Michigan Works is to go to their website, oaklandcountymiworks.com. Oakland County MI, like the state of Michigan, works.com, or give them a call at 248-858-5520, 248-858-5520 for more information. And again, this is for those that are seeking jobs, as well as those employers that are looking to fill some of these positions. And Jennifer, as you talk about some of those incentives, we've known in the past during the bulk of the pandemic that those incentives were a huge part of hiring employees and hiring staff, whether it was while people were working virtually, and certainly as people were coming back into these physical locations as things started to open back up. And now those incentives really going to need to be a little bit different. You touched on some of those points, but you are in a unique position. Your organization's in a unique position where you're able to interact with both those employers and those potential employees. And so from the angle of those that are seeking jobs, what are those things that they're really, really focusing on as things they want out of their employer and they're willing to stay on the sidelines if they're not able to get?
Sure. So, a lot of the job seekers we talk to, or even folks that are employed, that time during the pandemic really gave them a chance to reflect on, what was important to them. Work-life balance has a new meaning. Many people got a perspective that they had never gotten before, working remotely or having more flexible time with their family. And so we're hearing more and more from job seekers are saying, I really enjoyed that time. I really want something that allows me to have that work-life balance, allows me to have that flexibility. Also, the wage competitiveness. We've seen wages increase over the course of the last few years. We had some feedback even prior to the pandemic from the University of Michigan does an economic outlook forecast for Oakland County each year. And even before the pandemic, they were saying, wages are really flat in Oakland County, and something's going to have to give a little bit. And really what the pandemic did was really magnify that challenge. So, folks are looking for that work-life balance. They're looking for competitive wages, and they're also looking, to find their personal goals, right? How can I contribute to the success of a company? How can I be part of a workplace that makes a difference? How can I impact the lives of others? And those are things that we've historically heard in workforce development. So it's fascinating to watch how the culture has shifted from both job seekers and employers in the county.
We're joined on the program today by Jennifer Llewellyn, who is the manager and the workforce development director at Oakland County Michigan Works. Again, more information can be found and resources from Oakland County Michigan Works for job seekers and for employers looking to fill some of those critical positions in their company at oaklandcountymiworks.com, oaklandcountymiworks.com, or call them 248-858-5520. And Jennifer, for these companies, they know that these are things that employers want. These have been on the list. Some of these different incentives and those necessities, that work-life balance, maybe childcare, certainly the competitive wages, have been something that have been brought to the negotiating table quite aggressively by those seeking jobs over the last couple of years. But for these companies too, they're also in a state of recovery, or they're trying to gain that momentum back following the initial recovery as they're going forward and things are much more back to normal than they were before. So how does Oakland County Michigan Works in their consultation with these businesses suggest that they go about approaching that balancing act between the needs of these job seekers and ultimately those needs having to be somewhat fulfilled to get them through the door and ultimately accept your job offer, but ultimately still not putting yourself at a disadvantage where you're stagnating as you're trying to really get some of that oomph back into your business?
Sure, Tyler, this is where I think we can be most helpful to businesses across Oakland County. So not only attracting new employees, but how do we help them keep the employees that they have? And how do we help their employees grow on a professional trajectory? And that's really, the fourth piece that a lot of job seekers and employees are seeking, right? They're seeking an investment in their education and training and development. They're seeking career growth opportunities. We're spending a significant amount of time helping employers create registered apprenticeship programs. We have some great investment from the federal level and the state level to help offset the cost of creating registered apprenticeship programs within companies. Now, a lot of people, when they think of registered apprenticeship, they think of the skilled trades. They think of plumbers or pipe fitters or welders, but really you can apprentice any occupation. It's a combination of that on-the-job training and formal education. We have funding available to help offset the cost of a registered apprenticeship program for employers. We have an apprenticeship success coordinator on our team that can help businesses from start to finish, because it can be an intimidating process if you haven't done that before. But we have an extraordinary team here at Oakland County Michigan Works that helps create the apprenticeship program, implement it, and identify those dollars. We also have funding available through a regional talent innovation grant, and we have the Going Pro Talent Fund, which again provides funding for businesses to apply for, and they can use those dollars to upgrade the skills of their existing workforce or train new employees. So, if they have someone that has maybe 75 or 80% of what they're looking for, maybe they're missing just a little bit more as far as skills, we can provide them funding to upgrade the skills of that employee and help them get industry recognized credentials and certifications that make them a competitive, helpful resource within their organization. So, again, it's that balance. How do we help them keep the employees that they have, grow those employees that they have, but also train new employees as well. So if folks aren't connected with us, I would really encourage them to reach out to our Oakland County Michigan Works Business Services team.
And it's an interesting time too, because, and I was talking to some family about this recently, that so much of the current dynamic between employers and job seekers, or even employers and those who are no longer seeking jobs or have been on the sidelines for a while and are no longer counted in the unemployment, are looking for those sort of incentives. And it kind of brings parallels to the late 90s or the early 2000s, where there were so much of those incentives being provided by companies that were willing to really invest in these employees over time. Now we're seeing that kind of come back in really different economic times. So where do employers see this going in the future in terms of that balancing act between providing all these incentives to retain employees and certainly to bring people back in, while also providing enough to keep their company mobile and moving forward, and ultimately not over-investing in those employees, both current and potential, which could be of detriment to everybody involved?
Sure. I can't imagine being a small business owner in this environment, right? Trying to find that balance, to be competitive, to offer competitive wages and competitive incentives. And this is where we're seeing a lot of companies be really creative with, even low cost options. One business we were talking to was a healthcare facility, an assisted living facility, and they found they had food left over at the end of each night, and they started packaging up those meals and offering those meals to the employees to take home after work. And employees were saying, gosh, I don't have to go home and cook dinner. I can just provide this food for my family. And that small thing where they were making that food anyway, to be able to offer that to their employees as an incentive was really helpful. It's a lot of that career growth and career trajectory, and using resources like Oakland County Michigan Works, or even our education partners, Oakland Community College, Oakland University, nonprofit organizations, and being really savvy about what types of resources are out there for small businesses. Oakland County has a business forward team. It's a team of consultants that specialize in working with small businesses and helping them grow across the county. Reach out to them, reach out to us, because we know this is a competitive environment, and there's a lot of help that's available to companies to help offset some of those costs.
More information can be found on oaklandcountymiworks.com, and you can also find information about contacting your local Oakland County Michigan Works office. 6 of those all throughout the county: Novi, Southfield, Oak Park, Troy, Pontiac, and Waterford. All that contact information, their hours of operations, their locations, all on oaklandcountymiworks.com. And as you talk about the consultation and working closely with these companies, how does Oakland County Michigan Works ultimately help them in this effort? Take us through that typical consultation between your organization and these companies, and just how you really get into the nitty-gritty with them to approach their personal problems, their individual problems that they're facing and those challenges, and helping them through that, while also helping them kind of with those general challenges that all envelop this current economic time.
So we have an extraordinary business services team here at Oakland County, 20 certified professionals that are trained in business solutions. So really the first step is connecting with the business and sitting down with them and really asking some tough questions, doing that fact finding. You know, what are your pain points? Are you having a difficult time hiring? Are you having a difficult time keeping people? Are you having a difficult time, creating those career trajectories and growth? And as you said, it has to be customized for every business. They're all different. Everyone has unique needs. And our business services team, we try to think of them really as generalists, where it's not always that Oakland County Michigan Works has the solution, but we have an extraordinary group of partners from across Oakland County that can help address some of those needs. So for example, we had a business recently that hired some of the refugees from Ukraine and Afghani refugees, and they were finding that English was a barrier. Well, we have great partners with our adult education partners and Oakland Literacy Council that can come in and provide supports to that organization. So that's really the first step, is just getting in there, finding out where are the challenges, where are the successes, what are they doing really well, and how can we help that grow. The second piece is, starting to develop some of those solutions and partnerships. So bringing, the right organizations to the table to craft some of the solutions for that business. Sometimes it's our Michigan Works programs and services, and sometimes it's others. And then the third piece is obviously implementation and follow-up. So, is it creating an apprenticeship program and getting that implemented, or applying for a Going Pro Talent Fund grant and getting those dollars, or getting them connected with a partner. So, my big ask is always like, just let us sit down and talk with you. We may or may not be able to develop a solution or get you connected to the right partners, but even if we can offer, something, if we can address one challenge or help a company overcome one barrier that they're facing, that could make a difference for their employment and retention rates.
Yeah, and it all kind of snowballs forward into other efforts, whether it's on the employment side or just other efforts you're making to grow your company and get that momentum back following the COVID-19 pandemic. There's quick links on their website for employers and employees for a lot of different resources as well on oaklandcountymiworks.com. oaklandcountymiworks.com is the website. You can also follow them across social media on Facebook and on Instagram at Oakland County MI Works, and on Twitter at Oakland MI Works for more information. All those links on their website. Again, oaklandcountymiworks.com, or call them 248-858-5520. We're joined by Jennifer Llewellyn, who is the manager and the workforce development director at Oakland County Michigan Works, on today's edition of the Megacast. Jennifer, a few more minutes with you before we will need to move on. Bringing all this kind of back to those job seekers, how does that all parallel to your consultation with them, knowing what these businesses are looking for and knowing what these job seekers are seeking to ultimately make sure that they get what they're looking for out of this job search, while also helping these companies fill these different job openings that in some cases are critical openings that they absolutely need to fill?
Yeah, it's the consultation with job seekers is almost more important than it is with our employers, right? We have to help them understand the dynamics of the labor force right now and the workforce and what businesses need and want. So, very similar to businesses, that first step is just sitting down with a job seeker and getting an assessment of where they're at. What's their educational background? What's their work history background? Are there any patterns, right? Have they been terminated from their last 7 jobs? Or, were they at a company for 30 years? Those can make a difference in the next steps for their career. We also talk about any personal barriers that they might be facing. Are there financial hardships that they're up against, or transportation challenges, or childcare challenges? All of those are factors when making a job transition or career transition. And sometimes when people think about workforce development, they just think about getting a job or enrolling in education, but really being able to sit down with someone and understand the whole human being, that whole human-centered approach, and help, what are their short-term goals? What are their long-term goals? We also get into, educational, reading levels and math levels, and what their interests are and what their abilities are. So that piece is so important, that very, very first step before they enroll in education or start looking for their next job. We really want to get to know them. And then, similar to the employers, the next step is identifying, okay, what's the plan? We have a great team of career advisors at the 6 centers that you mentioned that sits down and says, okay, what's our next steps, right? Do we need to help them get into an education program? We have funding available for short-term certification programs. Michigan has a great program called Michigan Reconnect. It provides tuition-free education at the community college for individuals 25 or older that have less than an associate's degree. Maybe they need a skill upgrade. So maybe they're in IT, but their skills are outdated, but they need some IT certifications. We can help across the trajectory, whether it's entry level or professional level positions. And then that last piece, making sure that they have the wraparound services that they need. So if childcare is a challenge, how do we get them connected to the scholarship program? Or if transportation is a challenge, can we help them with car repairs or auto insurance, or, Uber, Lyft, or, developing that plan and those solutions. And then hopefully, the last step is meaningful employment, something that they enjoy, something that helps them be economically self-sufficient, and something that, they have a passion and a love for. So it's really, it's embracing the whole person and everything, their education, their work, their skills, and making sure that we can help address those barriers and needs that they have.
Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us on today's program. Appreciate your insight, as well as all these great resources available to employers and employees through Oakland County Michigan Works. That is going to do it for today's edition of the program. Keep up to date with us on civiccentertv.com/Megacast, and we'll see you very soon. In the meantime, take care of each other, and we'll have a new episode tomorrow.